Welcome back to Drowsy History, where the past unfolds slowly, softly, and in no particular hurry. Tonight, we are slipping behind the carved doorways of a Maya royal court into the private hours of the women history almost forgot to write down. If you enjoy drifting off to stories like this one, take a moment now, while your eyes are still open, to subscribe. And before you settle in, leave a comment with the oldest story your family still tells. If no story comes to mind, just tell us where your people were living 100 years ago and what they might have been doing at this hour of the night. We read everyone. Now, dim the lights, let your shoulders sink. We have a long way to travel, and all of it is downhill into sleep. It is the year 723 by a calendar that has not been invented yet. By your calendar, the one carved into every monument of your city, it is a named day in a great turning wheel of days, and the wheel is what matters. You live in a kingdom folded into a loop of a wide brown river, in the low green country that will one day be the border between Mexico and Guatemala. Scholars will call your city Yachilan. Its own people call it something older, a name that scribes write with a sign scholars will one day read as Split Sky. You do not know any of that yet, because you are asleep. You sleep in a long room of cut limestone, on a bench built out from the wall, softened with layers of woven mats and cotton batting. The ceiling above you rises into a steep stone vault, like the inside of a ship turned upside down. The walls were plastered smooth and painted, and in the darkness the colors are only a suggestion, a warmth of red hovering somewhere above your face. The first thing that wakes you is the river, not the water itself, but the mist that rises from it in the last hour of night, sliding up the terraced hillside and into the doorways, carrying the smell of wet stone and silt and green things growing. The great river bends around your city on three sides, holding it the way a mother holds a child on her hip. Everyone you love lives inside that bend. The second thing that wakes you is the howler monkeys. Far across the water, in the tall trees on the far bank, they begin their dawn roaring, a sound like wind dragged through a hollow log, rising and falling, answered by another troop deeper in the forest. It is a sound so constant, so woven into every morning of your life, that you do not hear it as noise. You hear it as the world clearing its throat. You lie still for a moment in the gray dark, listening. Below the palace terraces, down toward the riverbank, the city is already stirring. You can hear it in layers. The soft scrape of grinding stones, stone against stone, as the first maize of the day is worked into dough in 100 kitchens at once. A dog, a baby, the knock of a canoe paddle against a hull somewhere out on the water, a fisherman going out in the dark. Smoke finds its way to you, thin and sweet, the first cooking fires breathing themselves awake. Around you, the palace is a landscape of sleep. Through the doorway curtain, you can hear the compound breathing, the deep, slow rhythm of a household still under the surface, your husband's steady breath from the bench across the room, an attendant turning over on her mat in the antechamber, and beneath it all, so constant you must reach for it to hear it at all, the river. Your children sleep in the next room with their nurse, and if you hold still, you can convince yourself you hear them too, though what you are really hearing, after all these years, is the shape of the silence their sleeping makes. The air on your face is cool and tastes of stone and rain. The nights here never truly chill, but the last hour before dawn comes closest, and you pull the cotton blanket up another handspan and allow yourself, as you do every morning, a few stolen minutes of stillness that belong to no one, not the queen, not the household, not the gods quite yet. Just you and the gray light strengthening in the doorway, and the day standing outside it, waiting to be let in. You are a noblewoman of this kingdom. Your mother was born of a lineage old enough to have its own carved monuments, and your marriage bound your family to the royal house itself. Your husband is a lord of the court. The queen, the great lady whose name will outlast every person in this city, is your kinswoman, and you attend her almost every day of your life. Tonight, as you drift, we are going to move through one full turning of your world, from this gray riverside dawn to the lamplit hour when you lie back down on this same bench. We are going to follow the routines that no stone monument bothered to record. The kings carved their wars and their ceremonies into stone. Your work was written in softer materials, in cloth and cacao and children and whispered arrangements. And so it faded, and the world decided it had never mattered. The world was wrong. By the time the sun sets on this day, you will see just how wrong. But that is ahead of us. For now there is only the mist, and the monkeys, and the warm dark, and the sound of a city grinding its breakfast out of the earth. You sit up slowly, and your bare feet find the cool plaster floor, and the day begins. The first of your attendants arrives before the sun does, carrying a clay lamp of burning resin and a folded length of cloth over one arm. She is an older woman who has dressed you since you were a girl, and the two of you barely need to speak. There is a rhythm to this hour, worn smooth by thousands of repetitions, and you both step into it the way you would step into a familiar path through the forest. She sets the lamp in a wall niche and brings you the mirror. It is not glass. Glass mirrors do not exist anywhere on Earth yet, and will not reach these lands for another 800 years. Your mirror is a masterpiece of a different kind, a disk of dark slate covered in dozens of small polished plates of iron pyrite, fitted together like the cells of a wasp nest, ground and buffed until they gleam. Looking into it is not like looking into glass. The woman who looks back at you is darker, softer, slightly broken along the seams between the plates, shimmering like a reflection in still water at dusk. You have never seen your own face any other way. To you, this is simply what a face looks like. In the courts of your world, mirrors are not vanity. They are serious, even sacred objects, doorways where this world and the other world press close together. Kings are portrayed gazing into mirrors held up by attendants, reading them the way one might read smoke or stars. When you study your reflection in the pyrite, you are doing something halfway between grooming and divination, greeting the self that lives on the other side of the shining surface. What that other self sees, we should describe, because you are, by every standard of your civilization, a strikingly beautiful woman, and almost nothing about that beauty happened by accident. Begin at the top. Your forehead rises in a long, elegant, backward slope, so that your profile flows in nearly a straight line from the tip of your nose to your hairline. To your people, this silhouette is the shape of nobility itself, an echo of the tapering form of a young ear of maize, and maize is the most sacred thing there is. The young maize god, most beautiful of all the gods, is always shown with this same sweeping brow. You were given this profile before you could speak. When you were an infant, only days old, your mother and the midwife bound your soft head gently between padded boards, the way mothers of good family had done for their daughters beyond all memory. Over the slow months, as quietly as a river shapes a stone, your skull took the noble line. You remember none of it. It hurt no more than swaddling, and every person who has ever looked at you has read your rank in your silhouette before you said a single word. Your attendant combs out your hair, which has never been cut short, working scented oil through it and binding it into a heavy braid, doubled up and wrapped, threaded with strands of blue-green ribbon and small tubes of jade. On a feast day, she would build it into something architectural, wound over frames, crowned with feathers. This morning is an ordinary morning, so the braid is simple, which still means it takes a while. Then the paint. From little lidded pots, she brings out color ground from the earth itself, red from iron minerals, a deep orange red from the seeds of the achiote tree. With a fine brush and a steady hand, she paints your face in the patterns proper to your family and your rank, working carefully around your eyes. The paint is cosmetic, but it is also a uniform. In the plaza, a stranger could read your face the way you would read a page, and when you smile at her in the pyrite mirror, your smile glitters. Set into the front surfaces of your upper teeth are small round plaques of polished jade, each one seated in a shallow socket, drilled by a specialist when you were young. The drilling was done with a bow drill and an abrasive slurry tooth by tooth over many sessions, and it asked real courage of a young noblewoman, and you supplied that courage because you wanted what it bought. Your teeth themselves have been delicately filed along the edges into a pattern of subtle notches. When you speak, when you laugh, green stone flashes in your mouth. Jade is the most precious substance your civilization knows, worth far more than gold, the color of water, of young maize leaves, of life itself. Other people wear jade. You are jade down to your smile. Now the clothes. Your attendant lifts away your sleeping shift and dresses you in the garments of the day, and every layer is a sentence in a language of status that everyone around you reads fluently. Against your skin, a long wrapped skirt. Over it, the huipil, the garment that will still be worn by Maya women 13 centuries from tonight. A wide rectangular tunic woven in one piece, with an opening for your head, falling loose and cool past your hips. Yours is cotton, and that single word settles most questions about you. Common women weave with rougher fibers stripped from agave leaves, sturdy and serviceable. Cotton, soft and fine and gleaming, grown in tended fields and spun into thread finer than anything else in your world, belongs to families like yours. Sumptuary custom is not written down anywhere. It does not need to be, and your huipil is not plain cotton. Across the chest and shoulders runs a woven brocade of stepped diamonds and small figures in red and black and yellow, patterns we will have much more to say about later tonight because you made them yourself, and they mean far more than decoration. Last come the stones. Heavy jade ear ornaments, shaped like flared blossoms, are seated in your stretched earlobes, balanced by counterweights behind. Strings of jade beads at your throat and wrists. A pendant of bright orange, spiny oyster shell, brought by canoe and trail from a sea you have never seen. When you move, you are quietly percussive, a soft clicking of stone on stone, and people know you are coming before you enter the room. Your attendant holds up the mirror one last time. In the burnished pyrite, in the lamplight, the finished woman shimmers, sloped brow, painted face, jade smile, woven diamonds across her chest. Outside the doorway, the sky over the river has turned the color of the inside of a shell. The howlers have gone quiet. Somewhere below, wonderfully, there is the smell of food. Every morning of your life has begun with the same sound, and it is the sound of stone. In the service courtyards behind the palace, and in every household compound from the riverbank to the hills, women kneel at grinding stones, working maize into dough. The stone slab is called a metate, a saddle shaped block quarried from volcanic rock, and the roller is a stone the length of a forearm. The maize was set to soak the night before, not in plain water, but in water steeped with white lime or wood ash. By morning, the kernels have softened and their hulls slip free, and the grinding can begin. A long, patient, back and forth labor that takes hours out of every single day. That soaking step, so ordinary that no one in your world thinks to remark on it, is one of the quiet miracles of your civilization. The lime does not just soften the kernel, it transforms the grain, unlocking nourishment inside the maize that would otherwise pass through the body unused. A people who ate maize without that treatment would sicken over time, no matter how full their bowls. Your people learned the secret so long ago that its discovery has passed entirely out of memory, and it hides in plain sight in every kitchen in a bucket of cloudy water, keeping an entire civilization alive. No one will explain any of this for more than 1,000 years. Your cooks simply know that this is how maize is made into food, the way it has always been done. From that dough comes almost everything. This morning, as most mornings, it comes to you as tamales, plump packets of maize dough wrapped and steamed in fragrant leaves, some filled with beans, some with shredded turkey, some with a paste of squash seeds, lifted steaming from the pot. In these centuries, the tamal, not the flat toasted tortilla, is the daily bread of the lowland kingdoms. Alongside them, a bowl of black beans, greens from the garden, a little gourd of honey, robbed gently from the log hives of stingless bees that hum in the shade of the orchard, a honey thin and floral and faintly tart. You eat sitting on a mat in the cool of the portico, unhurried, while the sunlight comes down the terraces one step at a time. But the crown of the meal, the part of your morning routine that would make you the envy of nearly every human being alive in the year 723, is the chocolate. Not chocolate as the far future will know it, sweet and solid and cheap. Nothing like that. Cacao in your world is wealth itself. The beans grow in pods on small, tender trees in shaded groves, fussy trees that demand exactly the right warmth and wet, and the beans are so precious that they circulate as money. A rabbit is worth a small handful of beans. A good length of cloth is worth hundreds. Later chroniclers, watching markets in these lands, will even record counterfeiters filling empty cacao shells with packed clay, which tells you everything about how seriously this currency was taken. When you drink chocolate, you are, in the most literal sense, drinking money. The preparation is a small ceremony, and in the palace it happens under the eyes of women. The fermented roasted beans are ground on a warmed metate into a dark, glistening paste, worked with water, seasoned the way your household likes it, with dried chili for warmth, with honey, with vanilla, with a blush of achiote that tints the drink the color of embers. And then it is frothed, and the frothing is the art. A serving woman lifts one vessel high and pours the chocolate in a long, thin ribbon down into another vessel on the floor, then lifts that one and pours it back again and again until the surface stands in a thick cap of brown foam. The foam is the treasure. The foam is the point. Paintings on palace vases show exactly this moment. A woman standing, pouring from shoulder height, the dark ribbon falling. Your cup deserves a moment of its own. It is a tall painted cylinder made by a master, glazed with a scene of courtly life, and around its rim runs a band of glyphs. If you could hand that cup to a scholar 1,300 years from now, she could read the inscription, and what it says is astonishing in its plainness. It says, roughly, "This is the drinking cup for tree fresh cacao of," and then a name and titles. The finest ceramics in your world are name tagged, labeled with their owner and their intended contents, like a lunchbox in a distant future century. Archaeologists will lift these cups out of the earth and know exactly whose lips they touched and what they held. You drink slowly. The chocolate is bitter, warming, faintly spiced, alive. Above the rim of the cup, the day is assembling itself. Stewards are waiting in the courtyard with their tallies. The queen will expect you at her house before the sun is high, and from the far side of the palace, where the looms are kept, comes the gentle knock of wood on wood, which brings us to the part of your morning that history will most completely fail to understand. In a shaded gallery on the women's side of the palace, looms hang from the wooden posts like sails waiting for wind. A Maya loom is a thing of beautiful simplicity. It is called, in the far future, a backstrap loom, and the name describes it exactly. One end is a bar of smooth wood lashed by a cord to a post, or a roof beam, or the trunk of a tree. The other end is a bar attached to a wide strap that passes around the small of the weaver's back. The loom has no frame. The weaver is the frame. When she leans back, the long threads pull taut. When she eases forward, they slacken so the pattern can be worked. The tension of the cloth is the tension of her own body, hour after hour, and a length of finished fabric holds, in the truest sense, the posture of the woman who made it. You do not sit down at a loom. You put a loom on. It wears you, and you wear it. You were 4 or 5 years old when your mother first tied a tiny loom to a post at your height and settled the strap against your back. Every noblewoman you have ever known began that way, in the shade beside her mother, learning thread the way she learned speech. First to clean the cotton of its seeds, then to spin, rolling the fiber onto a slender spindle weighted with a little whirl of fired clay, spinning it against her thigh until an unbroken thread grew out of a cloud. Spinning is so endless that women do it in every idle moment, walking, talking, waiting, the spindle dropping and twirling beside them like a patient pet. Then dye, deep blue from indigo leaves fermented in vats, reds and warm oranges from minerals and seeds, a famous scarlet crushed from dried insects raised on cactus pads in distant highland country, traded down the rivers at painful prices. And rarest of all, a purple milked drop by drop from a sea snail on a far Pacific shore, a color so costly that a few threads of it in a garment say more than a whole chest of beads. Your people also make a color that will outlive the kingdom itself. By cooking indigo together with a particular white clay, the dyers create a luminous blue that does not fade, that shrugs off centuries of rain and sun and burial. Scholars of the far future will find it still glowing on temple walls after more than 1,000 years, will name it Maya blue, and will need chemistry laboratories to work out how it was made. Your dyers hold that secret the way your cooks hold the secret of the soaked maize, casually, completely, without writing any of it down. This morning you take your place at your own loom, lean back into the strap, and continue a brocade you have been building for weeks, a ceremonial huipil for the season of planting. Watch your hands, because what they are doing is not decoration. Into the white field of the cotton, thread by thread, you are raising a universe. A great stepped diamond grows under your fingers, and the diamond is the world itself. Its four corners, the four directions, the mark at its center, the place where the sky pierces the earth. Along the borders run little zigzag serpents, who mean lightning and rain. Toads squat in the corners, who call the rain up out of the ground. A double-headed bird spreads its wings across the chest, and when the huipil is worn, the woman's head rises through the neck opening at the exact center of the woven cosmos, so that she stands quite literally at the axis of the world, wearing creation arranged around her face. None of this is written in any book. It is written in cloth by women and read by everyone. Each kingdom weaves its own signatures, and a traveler in a market can tell where a woman comes from at 30 paces from the pattern on her chest. 1,300 years from tonight, in highland villages, Maya weavers will still be raising stepped diamonds and lightning serpents on backstrap looms, and museum scholars standing before ancient carved monuments will recognize, in the stone garments of carved queens, patterns their living neighbors are wearing that same afternoon. There is no older unbroken thread in the Americas. You are holding it. The loom is sacred ground. The goddess of the moon, patroness of women, of childbirth, of medicine, is a weaver herself, and is shown with spools and battens even a god must respect. When a noble girl of your world is presented as an infant, the signs of her future are placed in her hands, and among them always the tools of the loom. And here is the part that history will take the longest to understand, so let us say it plainly while your shuttle clicks along its row. Cloth is money, not in a poetic sense. In the plainest sense there is. Woven goods move through your world as one of its great currencies, alongside cacao beans and jade and shell. Tribute flows into this palace from subject towns, and when it is unrolled and counted in the courtyard below you, so much of it is textile, bundles of plain weave, stacks of worked mantles, folded lengths dyed and patterned. Vassals pay in cloth, lords are paid in cloth, alliances are dressed in gifted garments. When the king wishes to honor a visiting noble tonight at the feast, a portion of what passes to him will have come off looms exactly like this one. Every thread of that wealth passed through the hands of women. Men clear the fields where the cotton grows, but from the bowl onward, the entire chain of production that turns a plant into a fortune, the cleaning, the spinning, the dyeing, the weaving, the brocading, is women's knowledge and women's labor, from the humblest farm wife with her agave fiber to the queen herself, who weaves not because she must, but because it is glory to be good at it. Which means that when the palace stewards tally what this kingdom is worth, a great share of what they are counting is the stored, folded output of women's hands. The treasury of split sky is not a vault of metal. It is chest upon cedar chest of textiles, and you and the women around you are its mint. The monuments in the plaza show kings holding captives and scepters. Not one of them shows a spindle. But if you want to know where the wealth in those monuments came from, listen. It is the soft knock of the batten pressing thread into place in a shaded gallery over and over, all across the kingdom, every hour of every day. You work until the sun stands high enough to flatten the shadows. Then you roll the loom carefully, untie yourself from the post, and go to wash your hands. The queen is expecting you, and the queen, as it happens, is the most powerful woman you will ever meet. Before the queen's house claims you this morning, your path crosses the upper terrace, and from there the whole reason your city exists is spread out below you in the early light, and it is worth pausing at the parapet the way you always do. The river. It comes out of the highlands far to the south and runs wide and coffee brown and strong, hundreds of miles down to the northern sea, and it is the great road of your world. Your lowlands have no horses, no oxen, no wheeled carts, no beasts of burden at all beyond the human back, and so every heavy thing that moves any distance moves by water, and the river below you is a highway in constant, unhurried use. Even now you can count a dozen canoes on the reach below the city, some small as a single fisherman, some great hollowed trunks the length of several men, riding low under cargo, paddled by crews who sing to keep the stroke. Watch what is passing, because it is your civilization, in cross section, bundles that are almost certainly cotton going up, jars of salt coming down from the coastal pans by stages, worth their weight in argument. Baskets whose shapes you know mean dried fish, chilies, copal resin. Somewhere in one of those holes, wrapped and guarded, there will be obsidian from the far volcanic highlands, the black glass that every kitchen and every workshop needs, struck into blades so fine that surgeons of the distant future, testing them against their own steel scalpels, will find the ancient edge sharper. And in the richest cargoes, the true treasure of the trade routes, quetzal feathers from the cloud forests, each one a shimmer of impossible green, nearly the length of your arm, plucked, so it is said, from living birds that are then released, because a dead quetzal is worthless and an offense besides. Only the mountains make them. Every court in the lowlands wants them. Fortunes ride on feathers. Your family's wealth has always been braided into this traffic. Lords sponsor expeditions, tax the landings, marry into the merchant lineages that manage the long routes. The professional traders of your world are a shrewd and necessary breed, part merchant, part diplomat, part spy, welcome in cities their kings are at war with, carrying news along with cargo, and any noblewoman who runs a great household learns to sit with them, drink chocolate with them, and sift what they say for the grain of useful truth. It is one more quiet art of your position. The stele will record embassies. They will not record that half of what the palace knows about the outside world arrived in a canoe over a cup of chocolate in conversation with a woman who asked good questions. And where the river road ends, the market begins, and the market in your world runs to a remarkable degree on women. On market days, the open ground near the landing becomes a city of mats and awnings, laid out in its customary order, food here, cloth there, pots beyond, each seller in her accustomed place. And walk the rows and look at who is selling. Women, overwhelmingly, at the mats of produce and tamales and turkeys and cloth and thread and dye, farm wives with the surplus of their gardens, craftswomen with the work of their hands, sharp eyed matrons who broker between the canoe trade and the town. The far future will find, in the murals of a great northern Maya city, painted market scenes showing exactly this: women presiding over goods, measuring, arguing, handing across, and the archaeologists will note with some delight that the scene needs no caption in any century. You do not haggle here yourself, of course. Your household's buying is done by stewards and serving women. But you were carried through this market as a baby, ran through it as a girl, and you understand it as infrastructure, the place where the kingdom's smallest economies, the extra eggs, the second best hui pill, the basket of avocados, are turned liquid and circulated. Great tribute moves in state processions. Daily life moves across these mats, from woman to woman, in a hum of gossip that is itself a kind of currency, and a market morning leaves the whole city knowing what the whole city knows. And here, at ground level, you can watch your world's money actually work. A handful of cacao beans buys a turkey, a folded length of woven cloth, standardized closely enough that everyone can price it at a glance, buys serious goods, and bolts of such cloth flow upward through the tribute system like water finding its level. Strings of shell beads, salt by the measure, all of it changing hands with the brisk confidence of a system everyone trusts. No coins, no metal, no banks, and yet prices are known, values are steady across whole regions, credit is extended, debts are remembered with terrifying accuracy, and commerce binds together kingdoms that are actively at war with each other. Merchants cross battle lines that armies cannot. It pleases you, in a way you have never had reason to say aloud, that the two great currencies of your civilization are chocolate and textiles. The gods of your people include a genuine god of merchants, and trade is honorable, and wealth is real power. But no one ever seems to notice, as you notice, standing at the parapet with the market waking below you, that one of those currencies is grown and the other is made, and that the making of it, every thread of it, from every loom in every kingdom your world contains, comes from the hands of women. The men of your world go to war over tribute lists. A fair share of what is actually on those lists is, when you follow it back far enough, the patient daily work of wives. The sun is fully up now. The mist has burned off the river, the canoes are multiplying, and somewhere behind you, a steward is hovering with the particular stillness of a man who needs a decision. The day is asking for you. One more breath at the parapet. Then you turn and give yourself to it. Your route toward the Queen's house takes you, as it does most mornings, through the workshop courtyards on the palace's eastern side, and you go slowly here on purpose, because this is one of the pleasures of your position, and also one of its duties. The workshops are part of the palace economy, and the palace economy, as we have said, runs substantially on the judgment of women like you. You come to see progress, to settle questions, to release materials from the stores. You also come because it is simply one of the best shows on earth. In the first courtyard, the feather workers. They labor under fine netting in still air because their material is nearly weightless and entirely irreplaceable, and a sneeze in this courtyard is an economic event. On their low tables, sorted into lidded baskets by color and size, is the treasure of the cloud forests, the iridescent green of the quetzal, the blue of the cotinga, orange and rose of spoonbill, black sheen of grackle. With thread and glue and unbelievable patience, they are building a ceremonial headdress around a wicker frame, feather laid upon feather in graded rows, so that the finished piece will move like a living thing, shivering green fire down a lord's back with every step. A single great headdress consumes the trade goods of a whole expedition and the labor of a season. You inspect the work and release from the stores against a receipt 12 more prime quetzal plumes, counted twice by 2 pairs of hands, because at this table feathers are bullion. In the second courtyards, the painters. Here the fine ceramics are decorated, and your city's painters are masters known along the whole river, artists whose work is commissioned by lords of other kingdoms, sent as royal gifts, treasured and buried with the great. You watch a master lay a line of pure black slip around the wall of a chocolate cup with a single unbroken pull of the brush, a line a machine of the far future could not improve, and then begin the figures, a throne scene, a ruler leaning toward a kneeling messenger, rendered with a wit and liveliness that will make these vessels, 13 centuries from now, among the most sought after works of art from the whole ancient world. The painters here are trained men of good family, proud enough to sign their work. But you have heard from a trader who claims to have seen it that in a certain rival kingdom, a painted vase bears a signature that reads as a woman's name and title, and you have turned that little seed of information over many times, and so one day will the scholars. In the third courtyard, patience itself, the jade workers. Jade is the hardest material your civilization works, harder than any tool your smiths could make, even if you had smiths, and so it cannot be carved in any ordinary sense. It must be worn away, ground with cords and reeds and slurries of crushed stone, drilled with lengths of cane spun between the palms with abrasive paste, a war of attrition measured in months. The ear flares you are wearing at this moment cost some artisan the better part of a year. On the workbench today, taking shape at the speed of a stalactite, is a royal belt plaque, and the master shows you the barely visible line where a great king's profile is emerging from the green depths of the stone, a face being coaxed out of geological time. You approve the further release of abrasive sand from the stores, and you privately reflect, as you always do here, that of everything in the palace, these workbenches may be the truest portrait of your civilization, a people who took the hardest substance in their world, and by patience alone taught it to hold a face. By the time you leave the workshops, the morning is at full tide, and the tallies in your head are updated, and behind you, in 3 courtyards, wealth is condensing out of feathers and clay and stone at the unhurried pace of mastery. The king's names are on the monuments, but every splendid thing the monuments show them wearing came through these rooms, and through your ledgers, and past your eyes. Now, at last, the queen. To reach the queen's house, you cross the heart of the royal city, and it is worth slowing down to look, because almost everything the far future will imagine about this place is slightly wrong. The future will picture gray stone ruins, strangled in vines, silent, solemn, the color of shadow. What you walk through is blindingly bright. Every major building is coated in smooth lime plaster and painted red above all, a deep iron red that covers whole temples, with details picked out in yellow and black and that unfading blue. The plazas are not lawns, but pale plastered pavement, swept constantly, reflecting the sun until you squint. Roof combs rise from the temple tops like the crests on helmets, once bristling with painted stucco figures. A Maya city in its glory looks less like a ruin and more like a freshly painted stage the size of a town, humming with people who all seem to be carrying something. The Queen's house stands on its own terrace, and it is new. Masons are still at work on its upper facade even now, and above its three doorways, carvers are finishing something that has been the talk of the court for months: lintels of fine limestone, carved not with the king alone, as lintels always were, but with the queen herself, shown at the very center of the kingdom's most sacred duties. Stone was for kings, everyone knows that. And yet here is a house being raised where the queen is the story. We will come back to those lintels tonight, more than once. They are on their way to becoming some of the most famous works of art the Americas will ever produce, and the woman inside this house is the reason. You are announced, and you enter, and you make the small courtesies proper before a great lady, and then, because she is your kinswoman and has known you all your life, the formality relaxes into something warmer, and the real work of the morning begins. The Queen's receiving room would surprise the future in another way, because it is, among other things, a place of books and reading. Your civilization is the only one in all the Americas to build a complete writing system, an intricate script of squared glyphs that can record anything a voice can say: names, dates, history, poetry, prophecy. It flows around the rims of cups, climbs the sides of monuments, and fills books, real books, made of long strips of fig bark paper coated in fine white plaster, painted on both sides, and folded like screens so that a reader can open a whole chapter at once between her spread hands. The palace keeps such books: books of the calendar and its ceremonies, books of the planets, especially the great bright wanderer that your astronomers track with terrifying precision, books of tribute and lineage. They are kept wrapped in cloth, in dry chests, and handled like the precious things they are. And the ability to read them is the mark of the highest world you move in. Full scribal mastery is a jealously guarded craft, the province of trained specialists of noble blood who sign their work with pride, and most of those specialists are men. But the writing lives everywhere in your daily life, on your own drinking cup, on the monuments you pass, on the painted walls, and women of your rank grow up inside it. The queen follows the ritual books closely, and there are those at court who whisper that in some kingdoms, women of the royal house have taken up the scribe's brush themselves. Scholars far in the future will squint at certain painted signatures and wonder the same thing. This morning there is no poetry, only administration, which is its own kind of literature. Stewards kneel with their tallies. The accounts unroll, and you help the queen hold the whole picture in mind, because this, precisely this, is the noblewoman's real occupation, the one no monument will ever depict. The palace is a machine with hundreds of moving parts, and women of rank are its operators, kitchen stores rationed out, workshops of weavers, sculptors, feather workers, potters, each needing materials, each producing wealth that must be logged and stored. Tribute arriving from subject towns, cloth, cacao, salt, feathers, counted and receipted. Provisions for the feast tonight, which you have been planning for half a month, down to the seating order, which in this world is a diplomatic instrument as serious as a treaty. The king commands the kingdom, but the palace, the actual living organism of the state, its food, its wealth, its labor, its hospitality, runs to a great degree on the daily judgment of the women in this room. While the stewards come and go, let us tell you something about yourself and about half the noblewomen you know, and it is this: marriage in your world is statecraft, and noble daughters are among the most valuable diplomatic assets a kingdom possesses. Your own mother came to this city as a bride from another kingdom downriver, traveling by canoe with her dowry and her attendants, and most valuably, her loom skills and her lineage. Such journeys stitch the whole Maya world together. When a dynasty is shaken by war or left without a clear heir, a royal bride can arrive like a transfusion, carrying the blood of a greater house into a lesser one, and her sons rule with borrowed fire. The great powers play this game across enormous distances. Far to the north sits a giant of a city, a superpower whose snake emblem kings send their daughters to courts many days' travel away, and every such daughter is an ambassador, an alliance, and a claim, all folded into one person. Some of those brides, history will show, arrive in broken kingdoms and simply take charge. One of them, in a city not so far from yours, is doing exactly that in your own lifetime. And before this night is over, we will meet her properly, because what she has done with her widowhood is one of the great open secrets of your age. Even in your own court, the bride roads have left their weave. The king has more than one wife, as great kings do. The queen you serve is his royal consort of the great local lineage. Another wife came from a distant snake-allied house, and her rooms keep their own attendants and their own quiet ambitions. And every woman in this palace understands, without one indelicate word ever being spoken, that the question of whose son follows the king is being negotiated every single day in courtesies, in seating orders, in which lintels are carved above whose doors. This, too, is a secret routine of noblewomen, perhaps the deepest one. The future will call it intrigue and imagine whispering behind fans. Call it what it is. It is politics conducted by professionals in a medium men barely perceive. Near midday, the queen releases you. There is a great ceremony this afternoon that she must prepare for, a solemn one, and her preparation is not a matter of jewelry. It is a matter of fasting and prayer and courage, and before you take your place at it, you have a visit of your own to pay. Because in your world, before one stands with the gods, one checks in with the family, and the family, in the most literal sense imaginable, is closer than any stranger would ever guess. There is one more routine of your midday that we have to witness before the temple stairs this afternoon, and it may be the most intimate secret in this whole civilization of secrets, so come quietly. On your way back from the queen's house, you stop at the compound of your own lineage, the cluster of fine buildings around a private courtyard where your family has lived for as long as your family has been anyone. You come at least every few days. Today, before the great public ceremony, you would not dream of missing it because your ancestors are here, not in a distant cemetery, not in some removed and gated ground, here, under the floors. This is the way of your people, from the humblest farm hut to the palaces of kings. When the honored dead of a family are laid to rest, they are laid at home, wrapped and provisioned, beneath the plaster of the very rooms where their descendants go on living. A grandmother rests below the floor where her granddaughters now kneel at the loom. A founding patriarch lies under the threshold he built. Great kings take this custom to its magnificent extreme, buried deep inside the temple pyramids at the hearts of their cities, which are in the truest sense not monuments, but houses, vast ancestral homes with the family dead enshrined below and the family living ruling above. The far future, which will push its dead to the edges of town and visit them awkwardly once a year, will find this custom eerie at first and will be entirely wrong to sit where you are sitting now, on a mat in the cool of your family shrine room, a small brazier of copal breathing sweetness into the air, and feel what it actually is. It is company. The dead of your line have not gone anywhere. They have simply moved to another room of the house, one you cannot enter yet, and the floor between you is not a wall but a membrane, and through it, in both directions, pass warmth and duty and conversation. You talk to them. Everyone does, not in any fevered way, but in the practical, murmuring manner of a person keeping family informed. You tell your grandmother, 3 hands of years beneath the plaster, that the Queen's new house is nearly finished, that your eldest is shooting up like August maize, that the ceremony this afternoon will be the great one, the kind she herself once watched. You set out a little chocolate for her, a flower, a fresh coal of incense. It is exactly the visit you would pay her if she were living, shortened and made portable, and you leave it as you always do, feeling obscurely accompanied. And the ancestors, for their part, are not idle. They are the family's advocates in the other world, its senior partners, consulted through prayer and dream, thanked for good harvests, gently reproached in bad years. When the Queen this afternoon gazes into the smoke and an ancestor leans out of it to speak, she will be doing, at the scale of the state, and at a cost we will speak of carefully, the very thing you did today for the price of a flower. The whole towering apparatus of Maya royal religion is at its root this household custom grown colossal, the family visit to the room under the floor. We have reached the middle of her day, and somewhere near the middle of our night together, and if you are still even half awake out there, this is a gentle moment to press the like button before you sink any deeper. It helps more tired listeners find their way to nights like this one, and it costs about 1 second of wakefulness. And if sleep is already pulling you under, pay it no mind at all. The afternoon will unfold without you, exactly as it should. While the incense burns down, your thoughts drift, as they often do in this room, to the other great intimacy of your people's inner world, the one nobody teaches but everybody knows. Every soul, your people understand, is more than one thing. Part of you is the warm breath spirit that animates your body, but part of you, a wilder part, lives outside you altogether, sharing its life with an animal companion somewhere out in the forest dark, a creature born when you were born, whose fate is knotted to yours. What befalls it befalls you. A person of ordinary destiny might share a soul with a deer, an opossum, a bird. But the mighty, the royal, the truly formidable are companioned by mightier things, and the mightiest of all walk with the jaguar. This is why the king wears jaguar pelts and sits on jaguar cushions, why the greatest royal names in your world braid the jaguar into them. It is not costume, it is anatomy, and it is whispered in the way of things that everyone believes and no one states, that the most powerful sorcerers and rulers can cross over entirely, walking the night in their animal selves. When that coughing roar sounded beyond the fields 2 nights ago, and every dog in the city answered, more than one person lying awake in the dark asked themselves, with a shiver that was not exactly fear, who that might be. You have never been told what your companion is. One does not simply know. But there have been dreams all your life of moving low and silent through wet green shadow, of seeing the night as a lit room. You keep those dreams to yourself, mostly. Your grandmother, when you described them once as a girl, looked at you for a long moment and said only, "Then be careful for her in the rains," and went back to her weaving, and you have fed that sentence quietly for 30 years. Dreams in general, you should understand, are serious business in your world, a genuine organ of knowledge. The soul travels in sleep, meets other souls, receives instruction, brings back news. A vivid dream is discussed in the morning with the gravity the future will reserve for official correspondence. Healers ask about dreams the way future doctors will ask about symptoms. Daykeepers weigh them against the calendar. Some decisions of state, it is quietly known, have turned on what came to a ruler in the night. When you lie down on your bench this evening and the lamp goes out, you will not be, in your own understanding, going offline. You will be going out. The coal has burned to gray. You touch the warm plaster of the floor once, palm flat, the way you always do, a knock on a door between rooms. Hello and goodbye and thank you. Then you rise and step out of the cool shadow into the blaze of noon, because the horns will sound from the temple terrace soon. The gods are owed their visit too, and unlike the people under the floor, the gods keep accounts. Before we follow the queen toward her ceremony, you need to feel how time itself works in your world, because your calendar is not a tool you consult. It is a country you live inside. Two great wheels turn together over your life. The first is the sacred round, 260 days long, built from 13 numbers riding around 20 day names, like two gears meshing. Every day in the sacred round has a personality, a temperament, a fortune. There are days good for planting and days good for trade, days that favor marriages, days when a wise person begins nothing at all. Specialists called daykeepers hold the whole system in mind, and families consult them the way the future will consult doctors and lawyers at every hinge of life. The second wheel is the solar year of 365 days, 18 months of 20 days each, with 5 nameless days left over at the end, uneasy days when the year grows thin and people stay close to home. The two wheels turn against each other, and any single combination of sacred day and solar day repeats only once every 52 years, a span so close to a human lifetime that to live to see your own calendar day come round again in the same position is to have lived a complete life. And behind both wheels, the scribes keep a third reckoning, the long count, a great odometer of days ticking upward from a creation date deep in the past, precise enough to pin any event, a birth, a battle, an accession, to its exact day across thousands of years. Stone monuments open with these dates the way letters open with greetings. Your civilization is, among many other things, the most time obsessed the world has yet produced, and it thinks in day counts so vast they will still be running when your cities are forests. You were named from the calendar, as everyone is, your birthday woven into your identity. Your character was read from it before you could focus your eyes. When your marriage was arranged, daykeepers compared your day with your husband's the way jewelers compare stones for a setting. And on certain days, when the wheels click into sacred alignments, the royal family goes up the temple stairs, because on those days, the covenant between the kingdom and its gods comes due. Today is such a day. In the middle afternoon, you climb with the court up the long stair of the temple terrace into air that smells of burning resin. Copal, the crystallized sap of a sacred tree, is the incense of your world, and it is everywhere today, smoldering in ceramic burners studded with spikes, sending up columns of white smoke that lean together in the river breeze. Smoke, your people say, is food. The gods do not eat tamales. They eat the fragrance of things, the essence rising off offerings, and copal smoke is the purest food there is, a visible prayer, a road between here and elsewhere that you can watch being built. Offerings pass up the stairs in procession, flowers in armloads, tamales and gourds of chocolate set out for invisible guests, bundles of quetzal feathers. The music begins low, long wooden trumpets breathing a note you feel in your chest, turtle shells struck with antlers, a drum keeping the heartbeat of the whole hillside. At the center of it all stands the queen. She has been fasting. She wears the huipil of stepped diamonds woven for exactly this rite, the cosmos arranged around her face, and her expression has the stillness of a person who has gone somewhere inward and closed a door behind her. What she is about to do before the assembled court is the most solemn duty of Maya royalty, and it belongs to queens as fully as to kings. She is going to give the gods the only thing a monarch owns that is truly beyond price, her own blood drawn by her own hand. We will speak of this the way the night requires, gently and at a respectful distance, and we will not linger on the sharp particulars. It is enough to say that royal blood, freely given in small and ceremonial measure, is understood to be the most powerful offering that exists, the payment that keeps the sun moving, the rains returning, the maize rising. Kings make this offering. Queens make it too, in their own right, and the kingdom watches with awe, not horror, because in every mind on this terrace, the ceremony is not violence. It is generosity of the highest order, courage in its most concentrated form, the ruler paying the kingdom's debt out of her own living body. Drops of the offering are cut on strips of bark paper, and the paper is laid in a wide bowl and set alight, and this is the moment the whole rite bends toward. The paper burns. The smoke goes up, thick and curling, and in the smoke, the queen sees. This is the vision rite, and it is hers. In the coiling column above the bowl, exhaustion and fasting and faith and pain resolve into presence. A great serpent of smoke rearing above her, its jaws opening, and from its jaws the face of an ancestor, a founder of the line, leaning out of the other world to speak to the kingdom through its queen. The carvers working on her new house are setting exactly this scene in stone right now. The kneeling queen gazing up, the serpent towering, the ancestor emerging, and 13 centuries from tonight, people will stand in front of that carving, in a museum on an island your maps do not hold, in a city called London, and feel the hair rise on their arms. The future will struggle with this right, will flatten your whole civilization into lurid stories about altars. Let the record show what the stone itself shows. At the absolute center of Maya royal religion, at its most sacred and most public moment, stands a woman, performing a duty of body and spirit that no one else can perform. And the kingdom's greatest artists were set to work carving her, not the king, at that threshold between the worlds. The smoke thins, the trumpets release the held note. The queen is helped to her feet by her women, pale, upright, complete, and the court descends the stairs into the late golden light, and the mood breaks all at once like weather, because the solemn debt is paid. And now, tonight, the kingdom is going to celebrate. There will be a ball game in the great court, and after it, a feast that you have spent half a month building. And if the afternoon belonged to the gods, the evening is going to belong, in ways almost nobody will notice, to you. Before the feast, the game. The ball court of your city lies in the heart of the Plaza District. Two long parallel masonry buildings, with sloping benches facing each other across an alley of pale plaster, like a canyon built by hands. By late afternoon, its every surface is crowded. Nobles take the shaded platforms. Everyone else finds a ledge, a stair, a shoulder. Vendors work the crowd with fruit and cooked maize. The sound is the sound of every stadium there will ever be, that oceanic murmur that tightens into a roar and relaxes and tightens again. Down in the alley, the players are a kind of armored dancer. Around each man's hips rides a heavy protective yoke, padding bound over hip and ribs, with guards on the knee and forearm, because the game is played almost entirely with the hips and body. No hands, no feet in the classic form of the sport. The ball comes off a man's hip like something fired from a sling, and the ball itself is a quiet marvel of your civilization worth pausing on. It is solid rubber, heavy as a stone, yet alive in a way stone could never be. The raw milk of the rubber tree dries into a substance that crumbles and cracks, nearly useless. But your people and your neighbors long ago learned to mix that latex with the juice of a particular morning glory vine, and the mixture transforms it, makes it springy, resilient, bouncy. It is, in plain terms, processed rubber, invented in these lands thousands of years before the far future will patent the idea and name it after its own chemists. Children in your world grow up chasing rubber balls that no child in Europe, Africa, or Asia will see for another 8 centuries. The game runs in surges. The ball crosses, returns, hums off the sloped benches, and the crowd moves with it like grass under wind. Wagers ride on every exchange. Cacao beans, cloth, ornaments, and the groans and shrieks of the betting are half the music of the afternoon. The players glisten. The thump of rubber on the plastered slope is a sound you have known your whole life, as native to your city as the howlers at dawn. We should say honestly, and then step past it, that the ball game in your world is more than sport. It is bound up with myth and statecraft, and on certain terrible occasions, after wars, with the fates of captured kings. Those occasions are real, and they are not tonight. Tonight is the ordinary joy of the game, and we will leave the darker meanings where they belong, at the far edge of the court, in shadows the evening light does not reach. What matters for our story is where you are sitting, which is beside the wife of the visiting lord. Because tonight's game and tonight's feast have an audience of one, in a sense. A delegation has come upriver from a subject town, a place whose painted murals will one day be counted among the wonders of the ancient world, and its ruling lord sits this evening at your king's right hand. The visit is friendly in the way that visits between a great tree and a vine are friendly. Everyone smiles, everything is watched, and the instrument of all this watching and smiling, the actual machinery of the diplomacy, is the feast, and the feast is yours. You built it the way an architect builds a stairway, every step calculated. As dusk settles, the court assembles by torchlight in the great gallery, and your work becomes visible. The mats and cushions are laid in an order you drew up days ago, and that order is a political document. Who sits within speaking distance of the king? Which lord faces which? Who is honored with nearness? Who is honored with prominent distance? Whose ambitious cousin is seated where he can be flattered and contained at once? In your world, as in every court the human species will ever operate, the seating chart is a treaty written in cushions, and yours has been reviewed and approved like one. Then the food comes, wave upon wave, and it is a museum of the kingdom's reach. Turkey and venison in dark chili sauces, river fish wrapped and roasted, tamales in towering stacks, each variety in its own leaf, squash blossoms, avocados, honeyed fruits, salt from the distant coast, itself a subtle boast, because salt is wealth, and chocolate without end, frothed high, passing in painted name-tagged cylinders, the drinking of it as choreographed as everything else. For to hand a man a cup of chocolate from the royal service is a sentence in the language of favor. Musicians play through it all, trumpets and drums and rattles and flutes, and dancers turn in feather backracks that catch the torchlight, and at the height of the evening the king himself may ride to dance, slow and blazing in jade, because in your world dancing is not beneath a king. It is one of the things kings are for. And late in the feast, when the platters have slowed and the chocolate has made everyone expansive, comes the part you have loved since you were small enough to fall asleep against your mother during it. The teller of tales takes the floor. He is an old courtier with a voice like a drum spoken through, and tonight, for the visitors, he gives the oldest and best of all the stories, the one every child of your world is raised on. The tale of the hero twins, the clever brothers summoned down to the underworld by the lords of death to answer for the noise of their ball game, who walked into that kingdom of traps with nothing but their wits. House by deadly house, the old man leads them, the house of darkness, the house of knives, the house of jaguars, the audience mouthing the turns they have known all their lives, and then the trials and the tricks, and the ball game played against death itself, and the final splendid deception by which the twins let themselves be destroyed in order to return, disguised and unstoppable, to defeat the lords of the dead in their own court, and rise at last into the sky. The visiting lord's wife beside you knows every beat of it too, of course. Her city tells the same story. The whole Maya world tells it, in all its rival kingdoms, in all its quarreling dynasties, and there is a comfort in that which you feel without needing to name, the way the future will feel it too, sitting in darkened rooms, watching its own twin heroes outwit its own houses of knives. Kingdoms war, stories federate, and when the teller reaches the twins rising, and the room releases its held breath all at once, your eyes and the eyes of the woman from the rival town meet for a moment over the rims of two name-tagged cups in complete understanding. And through this whole glittering engine, watch the women because the future never will. You spend the evening beside the visiting lord's wife. You admire the brocade of her huipil, and you mean it, and you rate it too, its patterns telling you her lineage and her town's allegiances as plainly as a spoken introduction. She reads yours the same way. You talk of children, of weaving, of the health of her mother, and folded invisibly inside that soft conversation, a second conversation is happening about whether her husband's town is content, about a marriage that might be arranged between your families in a few years, about how firm the great tree's grip on the vine really needs to be. Nothing is decided, everything is advanced. No scribe records a syllable of it. When the two kingdoms part on warm terms next season, the stele will credit the friendship of kings. You will know, and she will know, where a good portion of that friendship was actually woven over chocolate between two women discussing thread. The torches burn down. The visiting party is escorted to fine quarters. The queen, still pale from her afternoon, retires early, and you check the stores one last time with the head steward and note what was consumed against your tallies, because the feast is not truly over until it is accounted for. And then, in the sudden quiet, you hear it from the residential courtyards, thin and high across the night air. A newborn, crying. Somewhere in the noble compounds, while the court feasted, a midwife has been at work. It is as good a door as any into the most guarded rooms of your world, the ones where noblewomen are born and give birth and begin again. Every kingdom in your world contains a second, quieter kingdom inside it, and its sovereign is the midwife. She is usually an older woman, widowed perhaps, unhurried, with hands that have caught more of the city's population than any priest has blessed. Her craft is under the protection of the great goddess herself, the aged moon goddess, patroness of the loom and of medicine and of childbirth, the divine grandmother of the world. What the midwife knows, she learned the way you learned weaving, at the side of an elder, over years, and none of it is written down, and all of it is precise. When a noblewoman of your court is expecting, the midwife enters her life like a season. There are visits and gentle examinations, hands reading the shape of things to come. There are herbs, teas for sickness and swelling and sleep, drawn from a green pharmacy of forest and garden that the healers of your world know leaf by leaf. There are sessions in the sweat bath, the little stone chamber of steam that we will visit properly before this night ends, where warmth and vapor are medicine for an aching body. And there are prayers and small offerings and the reading of days, because a child's birthday in the sacred round is the first fact of its life, more permanent than a name. When the hour comes, the birthing room belongs entirely to women, and the mother does not lie down. She labors upright, kneeling or squatting, gripped and braced by her attendants, working with the pull of the earth rather than against it, while the midwife works below, and the older women keep up a low current of encouragement and prayer. Your world understands very well that this is the most dangerous journey a woman makes. Warriors who die in battle are honored with a blessed afterlife. So, in the beliefs of these lands, are women who die giving birth, and that pairing is not sentiment. It is your civilization stating plainly what it knows about courage. Tonight, in the compound across the courtyard, the journey has ended well. Mother resting, daughter announced, and even at this hour you can hear the household's relief in its voices. In a few days, the daykeeper will come, and the baby's day will be read, and her name given from it, and her future coaxed out of the calendar like a thread teased from a skein. And then, if her family follows the custom of families like yours, will come the boards. We spoke of this at your mirror this morning, and now you can see it from the other side. The infant's head will be gently bound between padded boards, adjusted and tended over months, so that she grows into the long, noble profile of the maize god, the silhouette her rank is written in. Watch the mothers do it, and notice what the far future, wincing, will miss. There is no cruelty in the room. There is a mother shaping her daughter for belonging, giving her the mark of who her people are, in a world where that mark opens every door she will ever need opened. The baby fusses at it less than she fusses at hunger. The future will pierce the ears of its own infants for beauty's sake and think nothing of it. Every civilization writes on its children. Yours simply writes where it shows. Noble childhood in your world is warm, structured, and aimed like an arrow. For her first years, the little girl born tonight will live in a haze of indulgence, carried on hips, passed among aunts, nursed long, spoken to constantly. Your people are, by the account of every observer who will ever meet them, tender with small children to the point of doting. Discipline arrives later, and gradually, and mostly by expectation rather than punishment, the child folded into the working life of the household the way a new thread is folded into a weave. Somewhere around her 4th or 5th year, the ceremonies of childhood will mark her passage out of infancy, and her education will begin in earnest, and its curriculum is everything you have done today. She will kneel at a toy metate beside the kitchen women and learn maize before she learns anything else. She will be given a tiny spindle, and her first thread will be lumpy and absurd and treasured. In time, her mother will tie a small loom to a post at her height, settle the strap against her little back, and begin handing down the patterns, diamond by diamond, serpent by serpent, exactly as they were handed down to you, a library transmitted entirely through fingers. She will learn the courtesies of the court, the forms of address, the order of precedence, how to pour chocolate so the foam stands, how to sit for hours looking serene, which is a skill, as you can attest, of genuine difficulty. She will learn the calendar as a native language, the days and their tempers. She will absorb the stories, the hero twins who outwitted the lords of death, the maize god who dies with every harvest and rises with every planting, told and retold by grandmothers and by professional memory keepers at feasts. If she is very fortunate, she may be taught to follow the glyphs in the folded books, at least enough to track the ritual almanacs, and perhaps, if the whispers about certain courts are true, enough to take up a brush herself. And all the while, without any single lesson you could point to, she will learn the deep curriculum underneath, the one this whole night has been about: how a palace is actually run, how wealth is actually made and counted, how alliances are actually maintained over chocolate between women. Her brothers will be trained for the stele, for war and ceremony and public memory. She will be trained for the machinery. By 12 or 13, she will be a working member of the women's court. Not so many years after that, the day keepers will be consulted, and the bride roads will open before her, and a canoe will carry her, dowry and loom and lineage, toward a marriage that moves the map. If her blood is high enough and the age is turbulent enough, the map may one day move for her in earnest, in ways we are finally ready to talk about. Because you have been patient all night, and it is time. Time to open the door on the biggest secret in this civilization of secret routines, the one carved in plain sight on the monuments, the one the future will need its own revolutions before it can even see. Some of the god kings of the Maya world were women, and nobody who lived under them found that half as surprising as their distant descendants will. Before we climb to the thrones, stay a moment longer in the midwife's quieter kingdom, because healing itself is one of the great half hidden routines of the women of your world, and it deserves its own turning of the lamp. Sickness, in your understanding, is never only of the body. A fever may come from bad air or bad food, but it may also come from an imbalance, from an offense given to something that keeps accounts, from a fright that jarred part of the spirit loose from its moorings. So healing in your world works on every front at once. There are prayers and there are poultices, and no one sees any boundary between them, and the honest truth, which the far future will take a long time to relearn, is that a patient treated with medicine, ritual, confidence, and care all together often does better than one treated with medicine alone. The medicine itself is formidable. The forest around your city is the largest pharmacy on earth, and the healers of your people, many of them women, elders, midwives, herb wives, know it with a precision that will one day astonish the botanists who come to study what remains of their knowledge. Bark brewed against fever, leaves crushed for wounds, some with genuine power to slow bleeding and fight festering. Herbs for coughs, for stomachs, for sleepless nights, for the pains of age, for the whole long inventory of human wear. Sap of one tree for burns, root of another for aching teeth, a tea to bring milk in, a tea to ease a labor, a tea for grief, because your healers consider grief something you treat, which may be the wisest single item in their whole inventory. This knowledge lives nowhere but in people. It is a library shelved in memory, passed from an old woman's hands to a younger woman's hands, catalogued in stories and songs and the walked paths of gathering trips, and a great healer carries in her head hundreds of species, their seasons, their preparations, their doses, their moods. You yourself hold a modest wing of that library, as every mistress of a great household must, enough to treat the ordinary hurts of the compound, to know which 3 neighbors to send for when something is beyond you, and to grow, in your own garden plot among the flowers, a quiet row of remedies. And when the body is truly worn, whether by illness, by childbirth, by age, or simply by a day as long as this one, your world has a medicine it trusts above almost any other, and it is a small stone building breathing steam. The sweat baths. Nearly every settlement has them, and palaces have fine ones, low vaulted chambers of masonry, dim and close, entered by a doorway you must stoop through, with a hearth of stones heated fierce, and a jar of water standing by. Some royal cities build them grandly enough that they will be excavated one day, and mistaken briefly for tombs or shrines. And the truth is, they are a little of both and neither. They are where your people go to be renewed. You go tonight. It is the natural end of a day like this one, and it is part of the Queen's own restoration after her ordeal, prescribed by her women as firmly as any decoction. Inside, the darkness is total except where the stones glow faintly. Water hisses over them, and the steam comes up in a soft, roaring breath, and the heat closes over you like deep water. Bundles of fragrant herbs steep in the jar and are switched lightly against the skin, and the air fills with something green and sharp that opens the chest. You sit on the low bench with two other women of the court, and nobody speaks much, and the sweat comes, and with it, in the firm belief of your whole civilization, everything that should not be in you leaves, the residues of sickness, the heaviness of the day, the clinging fractions of bad luck. Emerging afterward into the night air, rinsed and wrapped, you feel scoured and light, made new, and 13 centuries of medicine will quarrel about the mechanisms while agreeing broadly that the old midwives were onto something real. The sweat bath is also, not incidentally, one more room that belongs to the world of women as much as to anyone. Mothers are steamed and strengthened here before and after birth. The midwife holds half her consultations in this warm dark. Confidences pass here that pass nowhere else, because there is something about sitting in hot darkness, unadorned, unranked, reduced to a voice and a presence, that unlocks people. A future age will build its saunas and its steam rooms and discover the same thing, that some conversations only happen in the steam. So mark this little stone house down as one more secret routine, one more engine humming below the notice of the stele. The kingdom's bodies are maintained here, its babies are safeguarded here, its news travels here, and its women, who spend their public lives arranged and painted and watched, come here to be, for an hour, only themselves. Wrapped and warm and clean, with your hair damp against your neck, you walk back across the courtyard under the first hard stars. The palace has gone quiet at last. But before we let you rest, we have a promise to keep. We told you that some of the god kings of this world were women. Come and meet them. For a long time, the far future will get your civilization spectacularly wrong on exactly this point, and the story of how is worth a moment, because it is really the story of why tonight's video exists. When explorers of a distant age first hack their way to the fallen cities and stand before the carved monuments, they will not be able to read a single glyph. The writing will be a locked room for more than a century. And so, looking at the elegant carved figures in their regalia, the early scholars will do what people always do with a text they cannot read. They will project. The richly dressed figures must all be men, they will assume, priests probably, serene astronomer kings. The occasional softer face in fine robes, standing beside a ruler. They will label a deity, or an attendant, or nothing at all. Then, within living memory of people watching this video, the code will finally break. Scholars will learn to read the glyphs, name by name, date by date, and the locked room will open all at once, and out of it will walk, among a crowd of warring kings, a procession of women that no one was expecting, because carved right there on the stones, with full royal titles, are queens. Not only consorts, though the consorts are there too, honored and named, rulers, women recorded with the titles of kingship, presiding over the rights of kingship, wearing the regalia of kingship, in several kingdoms, at several times. Your world has been telling the future about its powerful women all along, in plain sight, in stone, waiting more than 1,000 years for someone to learn to read. Let us meet a few of them properly, the way you know of them, as famous names in the world you actually live in. Begin about 4 generations before your time, in the beautiful Western Kingdom the future will call Palanque, a city of pale temples set against a green mountain wall, a place your grandmother spoke of as one speaks of Paris. At the end of the 5th century of the future's calendar, the ruling line of that kingdom arrives at a moment every dynasty dreads, and the solution, recorded without any tone of crisis, is that a royal daughter takes the throne. Her name reads as Lady Heart of the Wind Place, and she does not rule as a caretaker or a regent polishing the chair for a son. She rules in her own name with the full titles of a sovereign for more than 20 years. They are not soft years. During her reign, the kingdom is struck by one of the great powers of the age, the sprawling snake emblem hegemon we glimpsed earlier tonight, in an attack so serious that the scribes record it with a phrase meaning, roughly, the city was chopped down. She holds. The dynasty survives her storm, recovers, continues. And when Palanca's later kings, including the most famous king that city will ever produce, build their monuments and recite their ancestry, they will name her in the royal line without apology or asterisk, a link as solid as any man's. And she is not even the only woman to hold that particular throne. 2 generations after her, in another dynastic tangle, another royal lady takes power in Palanque, and when the time comes, she passes the kingdom to her 12-year-old son and stays beside him as the power behind it for years. A carved tablet will show the moment forever, the mother, seated, handing the crown of the kingdom across to the boy, the object of rule, moving unmistakably out of a woman's hands. That boy grows up to be the greatest builder his dynasty ever produces, the king whose jade-masked tomb will one day stun the world. Every stone of his glory stands on his mother's regency. Now come back to your own lifetime, because the most formidable woman in your world is alive right now, a few days' travel away, and her story is told in courts, like yours, in the tone people reserve for weather and armies. She was born a princess of a proud, aggressive kingdom allied to the Snake Lords, and about 40 years before tonight, she was sent along the bride roads to a city called Naranjo, a once-strong kingdom that had been beaten hollow by its enemies, its dynasty broken. Understand what she was sent to be, a transfusion, royal blood dispatched to restart a stopped heart. She restarted it as a storm restarts the air. Arriving, by the count of the scribes, she does not marry into a reigning king's shadow, because there is no reigning king to speak of. Instead, the monuments begin to record her, and only her performing the calendar rites that only sovereigns perform, raising monuments as sovereigns raise them, standing where kings stand, and the carvers portray her the way your world portrays exactly one kind of person. On one stela, she stands in full royal magnificence upon the body of a defeated enemy lord, the classic triumphal pose of the warrior king, struck by a woman without precedent softened or explanation offered. 5 years into her rule, she produces the dynasty's heir, and when the boy is 5 years old, he is formally seated as king, and no one is confused about the arrangement. Through his childhood, the kingdom under her direction goes to war again and again, hammering its old enemies, clawing back its tribute network, until broken Naranjo is feared once more. She will keep her hand on the tiller for decades, well into her son's manhood. The scribes of rival kingdoms, who despise her house, will nonetheless record her acts the way one records the acts of rulers, because that is what she is, whatever the formal lists say. You have never met her. Everyone you know discusses her. When the women of your court speak of her over the looms, there is a particular quality in the pauses. And then there is the queen you serve, the great lady whose fast and whose smoke and whose pale, upright endurance you witnessed this very afternoon. And here is the truth you understand better than any distant scholar will. Her power did not have to look like a throne to be power. Her lineage is so distinguished, so essential to the king's legitimacy, that honoring her is one of the ways he holds the kingdom, and honor her he does, past all custom. The house rising on its terrace is hers, the lintels being carved for its doorways, the finest sculpture your kingdom has ever commissioned, place her image and her name at the center of the state's most sacred acts. Stone, the medium of kings and gods, has been granted to a queen consort on a scale no one in your world has seen, and everyone at court can feel that a boundary has quietly moved. The future will make her lintels famous, will print them in every book about your civilization, will hang them where millions of visitors file past, and scholars standing before them will eventually understand what you already know from the inside. In the Maya world, sovereignty is a braid, and one strand of it always ran through the women, through their blood that legitimized, their rights that sustained, their administration that fed and clothed and funded the whole gleaming apparatus. Mostly that strand ran under the surface of the stone, but whenever the dynastic weave wore thin, at every gap and crisis and broken succession, the strand surfaced, and a woman ruled, and the world did not end, and the scribes carved her deeds with the same knife they used for kings. Positional, not exceptional. That is the secret under all the secrets tonight. Your world never needed to argue about whether a woman could hold sovereign power. It simply, when the wheel of circumstance turned that way, handed her the crown and continued the count of days. The lamp is burning low now. The stars have wheeled a long way over the courtyard while we sat with the queens. Come, one more walk through the sleeping palace, and we will put this day and you to bed. The palace at night is a different animal, and you know its nocturnal shape as well as its daylight one. The plazas that blazed white at noon are fields of soft gray now, and the temples stand against the stars as pure silhouette. Here and there a doorway glows where a resin lamp burns, small breathing points of amber in the dark. The night watch murmurs somewhere along the terrace. Down below, the river runs on with its endless brown patience, and the frogs have taken over the world, thousands of them ringing in the wet ground, a sound like rain that never lands. Far off, once, comes a low coughing roar that is not a howler, and every dog in the city answers it, and then the night settles again. Jaguars own the dark beyond the fields, and your people have always found that fact more sacred than frightening. The sun itself, your priests teach, becomes a jaguar at night, prowling the underworld until dawn lets it climb again. You make your last round the way the mistress of a great house always has and always will, half duty, half ritual. A word with the steward about tomorrow. A glance into the storerooms, where the feast's accounting sits finished, tallies weighted down on their shelf beside the folded wealth of the textile chests. A quiet minute in the doorway of the room where your children sleep, doing the silent arithmetic of breathing that every parent in every century does in doorways at night. All present, all well. The day's machine powered down and secured. And then, before bed, you do the thing that would most surprise a stranger from the far future if they could watch you do it. You stop in the middle of the courtyard, tip your head back, and read the sky like correspondence. Your civilization watches the heavens with a patience and precision that will humble the astronomers who eventually study its books. Without a single lens, using doorways and horizon marks and crossed sticks and centuries of stubborn record keeping, your sky watchers have measured the year, predicted eclipses, and above all tracked the great bright wanderer the future calls Venus, whose comings and goings your books tabulate across decades with an error small enough to embarrass clockwork. Venus matters. Its first blazing return to the dawn sky is an omen weighed in decisions of war and ceremony. Kings have timed campaigns to it. Tonight it hangs in the west as the evening star, and you find it the way you find a familiar face at a feast and note its height and its company, because your grandmother taught you to on the same pavement when your neck was small enough that looking up meant leaning against her. The moon is up too, and the moon belongs especially to you, to all women, the domain of the great goddess of the loom and the birthing room. The scribes track the moon's age in their inscriptions, count its cycles in elegant runs of glyphs, and somewhere in the palace a daykeeper is doing that arithmetic tonight, folding this ordinary evening into the immense braided count of days that your people keep the way other peoples keep borders, as the thing that must not be lost. Under that counted sky, you go in. The attendant unwinds the day from you, the jade, the paint, the braid. The woman in the pyrite mirror is just a woman now, barefaced, loose-haired, tired in the specific honest way of someone whose day held work worth doing. You lie down on the bench where we found you at dawn under a cotton blanket that came off your own loom, and the frogs ring on, and the river breathes, and the lamp is pinched out. And while you drift, let us stand a while in the courtyard without you, and keep watch, and speak softly about time, because we can see down the river of it further than you can, and it is right that you should know, as you fall asleep, how your story comes out. Here is what is coming, gently told. Your city has perhaps another century of greatness in it. The carvers who are finishing the queen's lintels will train apprentices, and those apprentices will carve a king of your house, whose monuments will crowd the terraces, and the kingdom will win its wars for a while longer. And then Across your whole lowland world, in the decades around the ninth century's turning, the weather itself will begin to fail. The rains will come short, year upon year, in a run of droughts as hard as any this land has known. Harvests will thin. The great rival alliances, already locked in generations of exhausting war, will fight harder over less. And the ancient bargain at the center of everything, the one sealed this afternoon in smoke, blood freely given in exchange for rain reliably returned, will be seen, kingdom by kingdom, to be broken. Kings whose whole meaning was that covenant will find that no one is listening from either direction. It will not be a single fall, nothing so cinematic. It will be lifetimes long, a slow ebbing, families leaving a quarter at a time, dynasties ending not with sieges, but with silence, the last dated monuments standing unanswered like letters no one writes back to. The plazas will whiten with disuse, green will come up through the plaster. The river cities, yours among them, will empty over generations, their people walking north toward kingdoms that still function, or dispersing into villages that need no kings, and the forest, which was always only waiting, will move back in with unhurried completeness, wrapping the temples, swallowing the stelae, growing 8 centuries of quiet. That is the part the future will fixate on: the mysterious collapse, the lost cities, the vanished race. Documentaries will lower their voices over drone shots of vine wrapped pyramids, and in doing so, they will commit the last and largest error anyone ever made about your people, because the Maya do not vanish. Hear that plainly in the dark and believe it. A civilization's kings can fall while its people continue, and that is exactly what happens. The farmers walk on, the languages walk with them. In the north, Maya cities flourish for centuries more. In the highlands, Maya kingdoms are still standing, still fighting, when strangers from across the eastern sea finally arrive, 700 years after your city goes quiet, and those strangers will need decades of brutal effort to subdue them, and will never fully manage it, and the people will endure that too. And tonight, 1,300 years after your lamp went out, some 7 million Maya people are alive in the world. They are speaking about 30 Mayan languages, descendants of the very speech in your sleeping mouth. And in the highland towns of Guatemala and Chiapas, at this hour, there are women asleep who will rise before dawn and soak maize in lime and grind it and pat it into breakfast. And later in the morning, they will tie one end of a loom to a post and settle the strap against their backs and lean into the tension and raise step diamonds and lightning serpents in colored thread. The cosmos arranged around a neck opening, patterns you would recognize across the whole gulf of time at a single glance. Museum scholars will stand before your queen's carved huipil and then look at photographs taken in living villages and feel the floor of the centuries drop away. The king's half of your world, the wars and the stele and the smoke, ended. The women's half never did. The secret routines outlasted the public glories by 1,300 years, and counting, which is perhaps the quietest and most complete victory in the whole human story. Your daughters kept the thread. They are keeping it right now, while you sleep, and that is where we will leave the ancient world tonight, in the year 723, in a stone room above a slow, brown river, where a noblewoman is sleeping under a blanket she wove herself, in a city full of counted days. Tomorrow the mist will come up from the river again, and the howlers will roar the world awake, and the grinding stones will start their patient music, and she will rise and do all of it again: the mirror, the loom, the ledgers, the long diplomacy of chocolate and thread. None of it will be carved in stone. All of it will matter. That is true of most of the work that has ever held the human world together, and if some of your own days feel that way, uncarved but essential, then you know something true about a queen's kinswoman who lived 13 centuries ago, and she, in her way, knows something true about you. Thank you for spending this night in split sky. If these journeys help you rest, subscribing is the surest way not to lose the path back, and the comments are always lit for family stories wherever your people's river bends. But none of that is for now. For now, the frogs are ringing, the lamp is out, and the count of days is safe in someone else's hands until morning. Let the mist settle, let the loom rest, let the wheels of the calendar turn on without you for a while. Rest easy, sleep well. This is drowsy history.